Very good afternoon. We are live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. US President Joe Biden speaks to leaders of Israel, Egypt and Qatar in wake of Hamas hostage deal. IDF chief warns Israel-Gaza conflict will continue for months. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov to hold bilateral talks in Moscow today. EAM holds productive meeting with Russia's deputy PM, affirms bilateral cooperation. Sweden edges closer to NATO after vote in Turkish Parliamentary Commission. Vote expected to be held within weeks in Parliament General Assembly. And dense fog engulfs part of North India. Flights, trains delayed, visibility in capital New Delhi down to 50 meters on Wednesday morning. Now news in detail. US President Joe Biden spoke to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the leaders of Qatar and Egypt on Wednesday in the aftermath of a deal to secure the release of dozens of hostages held by Hamas. The White House in a statement said President Biden emphasized the critical need to protect the civilian population, including those supporting the humanitarian aid operation, and the importance of allowing civilians to move safely away from areas of ongoing fighting, adding the leaders discussed the importance of securing the release of all remaining hostages. Biden is vacationing with his family on the Massachusetts island of Nantucket for Thanksgiving. The White House said summaries of the calls would be released later. President Biden also spoke to Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and Qatari Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. The White House said Biden and Qatari Emir Sheikh discussed the need to release hostages held in Gaza and efforts to boost humanitarian aid. Qatar and Egypt were mediators between Israel and Hamas in the late November truce. Current diplomatic efforts on a new truce have yielded little public progress so far. The Israel-Hamas conflict in Gaza will likely go on for many months, the country's military chief Herzi Halevi has said. Israel has vowed to annihilate Hamas after its fighters infiltrated Israel border towns, killing 1,200 people and took about 240 hostages back to Gaza. The Israeli forces are continuing their offensive against Hamas, deploying multiple methods and strategies.
There are no magic solutions. There are no shortcuts in dismantling a terrorist organization. Only determined and persistent fighting will work, and we are very, very determined. We will reach Hamas's leadership too, whether it takes a week or if it takes months.
Israel's chief military spokesperson Daniel Hagari said that the attacks on ships which have no Israeli links in Red Sea area is an act of Iranian terrorism carried out by the Houthis. Hagari's statement comes after the Israel's announcement of intercepting a hostile aerial target by an Israeli fighter jet over the Red Sea area, which was en route to Israeli territory.
Today, an Israeli fighter jet intercepted a hostile aerial target in the Red Sea area, which was en route to Israeli territory. It did not cross into Israeli territory. The Houthi fire towards Israeli territory is an act of terrorism. It is an act directed by Iran and by means of Iranian intelligence and weapons. These hostile acts are not directed only at Israel. The attacks at sea on ships which have no Israeli link is an act of Iranian terrorism carried out by the Houthis, and this is a global problem.
White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and Israel's Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer discussed planning for the day after the Israel-Hamas conflict, including governance and security in Gaza. A White House official says Sullivan and Dermer also discussed efforts to bring home the remaining hostages and a transition to a different phase to maximize focus on high-value Hamas targets when they met on Tuesday. And the United Nations has assigned Sigrid Kaag as the humanitarian coordinator. Her appointment follows last week's UN Security Council resolution calling for more aid to enter the Palestinian enclave. William Denslow reports from New York, where the UN is headquartered.
As well as serving as Finance Minister and Deputy Prime Minister in the Netherlands, Sigrid Kaag has also performed a number of UN duties in the past, including Special Coordinator for Lebanon. Now, as of January 8th, she'll be taking on a new UN role, which is Humanitarian Relief Coordinator in Gaza. The United Nations describes her responsibilities, including her work to facilitate, coordinate, monitor and verify humanitarian relief consignments for Gaza. This is part of a UN Security Council resolution that was passed last week that calls for the urgent steps to be taken to immediately allow the safe, unhindered and expanded humanitarian access in Gaza. The resolution took days of diplomatic wranglings for Council members to find enough consensus to pass it. But critics say it's been watered down and diluted too much, no longer calling for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. UN aid agencies warn that the healthcare system in Gaza is on the brink of collapse, and other aid officials on the ground warn that a quarter of the population in the Palestinian enclave are facing catastrophic levels of hunger. Recently, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres says that a ceasefire is the only way to end the nightmare people in Gaza are currently going through. William Denslow in New York, reporting for DD India.
Has reported that on Tuesday, 83 humanitarian aid trucks and 7 ambulances were inspected at the Nitzana checkpoint and transferred to Gaza via the Rafah crossing from Egypt. At the request of the UN, the Kerem Shalom border crossing was closed for inspection of 8 trucks due to logistic constraints on the Gaza side of the crossing. Earlier, Israeli agency Cognitive Abilities Test reported that 218 trucks loaded with humanitarian aid for the people of Gaza were inspected and transferred to the Gaza Strip on Monday. Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi militia claimed responsibility for a missile attack on Tuesday on a container ship in the Red Sea and for an attempt to attack Israel with drones. MSC Mediterranean Shipping said there were no injuries to its crew from the attack on the ship, the United 8, en route from Saudi Arabia to Pakistan. The ship had informed a nearby coalition naval warship about the attack and had taken evasive maneuvers. Meanwhile, Israel mentioned that its aircraft had intercepted a hostile aerial target in the Red Sea area. In a televised address, Houthi military spokesperson Yahya Saria said that the group had targeted the vessel, which he identified as the MSC United, after the crew failed to respond to warnings, adding that they had carried out a military operation targeting Eilat and other areas in Israel, terming them as occupied Palestine. Iran has warned that Israel will pay the price for the assassination of Islamic Revolution Guards Corps veteran commander Sayyid Razi Musawi in Syria. The IRGC announced that Musawi, serving as a military advisor, was killed in an Israeli missile attack in the Syrian capital, Damascus. Musawi was responsible for backing up the resistance front in Syria and was one of the comrades of the late Iranian commander Qasem Soleimani, who was assassinated in a drone strike near the Baghdad International Airport in January 2020. The IRGC's official news outlet quoted an IRGC statement as saying, "The IRGC stressed in the release that Israel will pay the price for the crime." Iran's defense ministry on Tuesday also vowed response, calling the act a terrorist crime. Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi has said the malicious move by Israel was another indication of its desperation, weakness and helplessness in the region, vowing that Israel will definitely pay the price for its crime, according to a statement published on the website of his office. Moving on, Russia-Ukraine updates now. A Ukrainian attack on the Crimean port of Feodosia damaged a large Russian landing ship, killing 1 person and injuring 2 others. The footage showed the moment of the large explosion at the Crimean port of Feodosia on Tuesday as thick plumes of smoke rose. Moscow confirmed the number of casualties and damage on Tuesday after Kiev said it had destroyed an important Russian warship. Ukraine says at least one policeman has been killed and 4 others injured in a Russian attack on a railway station in the southern Ukrainian city of Kherson on Tuesday. About 140 civilians had been at the station in the early evening, and quick action by police to direct them away saved many lives, according to Ukraine Interior Minister Ihor Klimenko. Ukrainian Railways said evacuees were taken from the station by bus northwest to the town of Mykolaiv. Delayed trains were rescheduled. In a nightly video address on Tuesday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Russian forces had shelled the railway station in the southern city of Kherson, with the number of casualties still to be determined.
There was a Russian strike on the Kherson railway station. There was an evacuation train. All services are now on site. The number of dead and injured is being established. There were many civilians there.
Ukrainian Army Chief General Valery Zaluzny said on Tuesday that he was not satisfied with the work of military draft officers that are responsible for mobilizing troops to keep up the war effort against the Russian forces. Zaluzny made the comments at a press conference in Kiev a day after Ukraine's parliament published the text of draft law containing reforms to the army draft program, including lowering the age of men who can be mobilized to 25 from 27.
As for the local draft offices as of now, frankly speaking, I'm not currently satisfied with the work of the draft offices. If I were satisfied with their work, we would not discuss this bill right now.
Ukraine's army chief said on Tuesday his troops remained in an area of the eastern town of Mariinka, despite assertions by Russia's defense minister Sergei Shoigu that Russian troops have gained full control of the eastern Ukrainian town of Mariinka. Valery acknowledged to reporters that the town was in ruins, but Ukrainian troops were still positioned on its northern flank. Now, Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu announced on Tuesday that the Russian army has achieved its major goal for 2023 by thwarting Ukraine's counteroffensive. According to the minister, the Russian forces are gaining more favorable positions and expanding their control in all directions in the battlefield. Besides, the defense industry enterprises in Russia significantly increased its production volume to meet the needs of the operation, Shoigu added. On the same day, Valery, chief commander of the armed forces of Ukraine, stated that the Ukraine, with support from other countries, can simultaneously prepare up to 10 brigades. The Turkish Parliament's Foreign Affairs Commission approved Sweden's NATO membership bid on Tuesday in a key step towards enlarging the Western Bloc. This comes after 19 months of delay where Ankara had demanded security relation concessions from Stockholm. The commission, controlled by President Erdogan's ruling party, voted to back the Swedish bid after long hours of debate. The bid had been earlier voted on November but got postponed due to some issues. This will again be put to vote in the Parliament General Assembly, where Erdogan's party also holds a majority, and expected to pass through this will take time. In a statement following the approval, Swedish Foreign Minister Tobias Billström said Sweden welcomed the move and looked forward to joining NATO. Boris Ruk, NATO Assistant Secretary General for Political Affairs and Security Policy, said the Commission's approval was an excellent news. Thousands gathered in front of the Central Election Commission building in Belgrade on Tuesday to protest over the recent election results. The opposition Serbia Against Violence Alliance, which placed second in a general election earlier this month, has accused the ruling Serbian Progressive Party of widespread vote fraud. Serbia Against Violence has been organizing daily protests over the results in front of the Election Commission. On Sunday evening, the protests turned violent and 38 people were detained by the police. This happened after an international monitoring mission last week accused the ruling party of an unfair advantage through media bias, the improper influence of President Alexander Vučić, and voting irregularities. Now, Marinika Tepic, a leading figure in Serbia's main opposition party, vowed on Tuesday to continue on with a hunger strike to protest against election fraud. despite a deterioration in her health after 9 days without food. She was placed on twice daily intravenous drips following a deterioration in her health on Monday. Tepic accused authorities of including dead people on voter list and importing voters from Bosnia and Kosovo. Shifting focus to Africa now, a group of opposition candidates in the Democratic Republic of Congo have rejected the outcome of last week's elections and called for a protest to denounce the vote. Partial results released on Monday show the incumbent President Felix Tshisekedi with a clear lead. The elections in the Central African country were marred by widespread irregularities last Wednesday. DD India correspondent Chris Okramringa has more from Kinshasa.
5 opposition candidates in the Democratic Republic of Congo's presidential elections called for the protest in the capital, Kinshasa. They want the elections cancelled in a rerun organized by a new team of electoral officials. The DRC government has not granted the opposition candidates permission to hold the protest, but they said it's within their constitutional right. The candidates include leading opposition figures like Martin Fayulu and Denis Mukwege. They described last Wednesday's elections as a sham. The vote was marred by delays, faulty machines, and missing names on the voters' list. Authorities had to extend the voting process to Thursday. The DRC's Electoral Commission has released partial results showing the incumbent President Felix Tshisekedi with a clear lead. Vote counting continues across the vast Central African country. Nearly 44 million people were registered to vote in this year's elections that are being held amidst armed conflict in the east of the country. The electoral body is expected to release the full provisional results on December 31st. Chris Okramringa in Kinshasa for DD India.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Homeland Security Chief Alejandro Mayorkas will visit Mexico to meet with Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador amidst migrant crisis. Thousands of migrants and asylum seekers continue to move slowly north across the southern Mexican state of Chiapas in a caravan hoping to reach the U.S. border. Mexican National Guard monitored migrants from Honduras and other Latin American and Caribbean countries, stopping occasionally for rest and prayer. The local authorities estimated that the average number of people per day was around 8,000. Earlier, U.S. President Joe Biden spoke with his Mexican counterpart by telephone on Thursday, during which the two leaders said that more enforcement was needed at the shared frontier. Time now for a very short break, but still to come on this edition of DD India Live. South Korean actor Lee Sun-kyun of Oscar-winning film Parasite found dead. Stay with us to know the reason of the actor's demise. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi will interact with beneficiaries of Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra today. And rain threat looms as KL Rahul aims at resuming fight back in Centurion on day 2.
India's huge leaps towards becoming self-reliant in defense sector. Policy changes enabling increased involvement of private sector. From humanitarian assistance to rescue operations. Increased synergy among armed forces through joint military exercises. Watch Echoes 2023, India's defenders at these times only on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Some more stories. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has kicked off a key meeting of the country's ruling party on Wednesday, setting the stage for unveiling policy decision for the new year. The 9th preliminary meeting of the 8th Central Committee of the Workers' Party of Korea wraps up a year during which the isolated country enshrined nuclear policy in its constitution, successfully launched a spy satellite and fired a new intercontinental ballistic missile. The days-long assembly of the party and government officials has been used in recent years to make key policy announcements. Previously, state media released Kim's speech on New Year's Day. According to state media, on the first day of the meeting on Tuesday, participants discussed 6 major agenda items, including this year's policy and budget implementation, a draft budget for 2024 and ways to bolster the party's leadership. Actor Lee Sun-kyun, who took his own life on Wednesday at the age of 48 amid an investigation into alleged drug abuse, was at the peak of his acting career. In 2021, the veteran actor won a Screen Actors Guild Award along with his castmates of Bong Joon-ho's Parasite. Last year, he was also nominated for the Best Actor Award at the International Emmy Awards for his role in the sci-fi film Dr. Brain. Lee had been under investigation over illegal drug use allegations amid an ongoing government crackdown on illegal drugs. His wife had reported to police that Lee had left home and she had found what appeared to be a suicide note. Lee was found unconscious inside a car at a park in Seoul. In neighboring Pakistan, former Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan has appealed the Supreme Court once again to nullify his conviction in the Tosha Khana case, Pakistan's Geo News reported. The move comes after Supreme Court Registrar's Office raised objections to his initial appeal, directing him to refile it with all relevant papers by January 6th. Imran Khan had been found guilty of graft in the Tosha Khana case, leading to his disqualification from holding any public office for 5 years. Imran Khan filed a fresh petition arguing that the suspension of only his sentence instead of the entire order of conviction by the trial court denies him his fundamental right to contest elections as he eyes the upcoming general election scheduled for February 8, 2024. Meanwhile, Pakistan's Election Commission has accepted former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif's nomination papers for the February 8 general election, despite questions about his eligibility following a lifelong disqualification by the apex court. Nawaz Sharif's lawyer Amjad Parvez said no objections have been raised to his candidature and he will contest both from Lahore and Mansahara city of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Now, Parvez added Sharif's disqualification has ended after his acquittal in corruption references against him. Sharif was acquitted in 2 major corruption cases by the Islamabad High Court. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, who is on a visit to Russia, met Russia's Deputy Prime Minister Denis Manturov in Moscow for a comprehensive and constructive discussion of the two nations' bilateral economic relations. Both the leaders appreciated the greater focus on exploring new opportunities and also noted the significant progress in trade, finance, connectivity, energy, civil aviation and nuclear domains. Both the leaders also witnessed signing off agreements on nuclear power and in areas of medicines, pharmaceutical substances and medical devices. Meanwhile, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar will hold talks with his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov in Moscow on Wednesday. Dr. S. Jaishankar also visited the Russian Industry and Trade Exhibition with DPM Denis Manturov. Minister highlighted it is an interesting exposition on Russia's contemporary capabilities, holds promise for greater collaboration between our two countries. A thick layer of dense fog engulfed many parts of northern India early on Wednesday. Many parts of the capital city are shrouded in a thick layer of fog. 35 flights in Delhi were delayed as visibility dropped to just 50 meters, disrupting the movement of the traffic. As many as 25 trains headed to Delhi are delayed. The Weather Office issued a red alert over very dense fog in the national capital as cold wave conditions are expected to continue for the next few days. The India Met Department predicted dense fog conditions over Punjab, Haryana, Delhi, UP, Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh. Also, apart from Delhi, several North Indian cities woke up to foggy weather that reduced the visibility, while Patiala, Lucknow and Prayagraj recorded very low visibility of 25 meters. In Amritsar, it dropped to 0 meters. The minimum temperature is likely to remain at around 7 or 8 degrees over the next 6 days. Now, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi will interact with beneficiaries of the Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra, which is a nationwide outreach initiated to raise awareness to achieve saturation of various welfare programs through video conferencing today. Thousands of beneficiaries from across the country will join the event. Union ministers, MPs, MLAs and local level representatives will also join the program. Since its launch on the 15th of November this year, Prime Minister Modi has regularly interacted with the beneficiaries of the Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra all across the country. And the Indian government has issued an advisory to social media platforms to comply with IT rules. The advisory emphasizes clear communication of prohibited content and reporting obligations to address deepfake and doctored video concerns. So this is the advisory. Mandates intermediaries communicate prohibited content, and content must be clearly communicated to the users. Content to be used in clear and precise language, and intermediaries to communicate their rules, regulations and privacy policy, and prevent users from sharing any information which is related to prohibited content. So they need to be very careful. This is the advisory by the government to the social media platforms, and rule aims to ensure platforms identify. And it also aims to remove misinformation, false or misleading content. Now let's take a look at other stories making news today. Security outside the Israel embassy and other Israeli establishments in capital New Delhi has been tightened in the wake of Tuesday's explosion near the Israeli embassy. Indian Defence Minister Rajnath Singh arrives in North Indian Union territory of Jammu and Kashmir today to review the security situation there, especially in the border districts of the Rajouri and Poonch after witnessing terror attacks recently. Sports now. India are playing South Africa in the first test in Centurion. Team India scored 208 for the loss of 8 wickets after 59 overs on day 1 after the play was called off early due to rain. KL Rahul held the fort from one end to stage India's comeback after Kagiso Rabada punched Indian batters to wrap them on low scores. Virat Kohli and Shreyas Iyer contributed 38 and 31 respectively after Africa struck early before lunch. KL Rahul then took the responsibility upon himself to help India cross 200 and is unbeaten on 70. Shardul Thakur played a cameo of 24. Rabada was the sole destroyer as it took a 5-wicket haul. Nandraberger took 2 while Marco Jansen took 1 wicket. Earlier, South Africa's captain Temba Bavuma won the toss and put India into bat. The day 2 will start half an hour early to make up for the lost overs on day 1 due to rain. The match will start at 1 p.m. Indian Standard Time, which is 7:30 GMT. Alright, that's all for this edition of DD India Live, but do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter and Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. From all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India Live.